So this video is for De Bello Gallico, Book 5, Chapter 44, a very famous chapter. Once again, do me a favor, go ahead and try and mark it up right now so that this can go a little faster. Okay, here we go. The grammar for this is really not that bad. We start off in the very first line. We've got a prepositional phrase right there. Main verb starts us off. For tisi me weary, that looks like nominative subject to me, or at least predicate nominative. Centuriones, just renaming them. And then we have a clause, qui, to appropinquarent, appropinquarent being the main verb of the clause. And then we get some more nominatives here at the end. Titus Pulo et Lucius Vorenus, probably centurions being renamed. So here we go. There were, in this legion, very brave men, comma, centurions, comma, who were approaching the first ranks, and then we get their names, Titus Pullo and Lucius Vorenus. Next sentence. Let's see here. We have subject with he, these guys. Inter se, prep phrase. Perpetuas, modifying controversias. Habebat, main verb. And we have quinam, which is going to start maybe some kind of clause here, very short one, to anteferetur, main verb of the clause. And then we have another main verb, contendebant, down here. Prep phrase, de locis sumis. Okay, so backtracking, going to our subject. These guys, meaning Pullo and Vorenus, had everlasting disagreements amongst themselves, perpetual disagreements between themselves. Quinam anteferetur, which one was preferred, meaning by all of the other soldiers. And in all of the years, they were contending, struggling, fighting concerning the highest, locis here probably means ranks again, concerning the highest ranks. And they were doing this out of rivalries, right? They were fighting in all the years concerning the highest ranks by jealousies, by rivalries. Now, ex his, from these men, we have Pullo here, he's our subject. Circumstantial clause right here, cum to pugnaretur. That's the main verb of the clause. There is a prep phrase here, ad munitiones. And then main verb, he says something here. And in his direct speech, we have a couple of main verbs. Dubitas would be one, and spectas would be another. Just to tell you, some manuscripts besides spectas have expectas, and we'll get to that in just a second. I do see a prep phrase here, pro laude, and I think that that's pretty much all that we can mark. So from these men, Pullo, when pugnaretur, passive voice, the subject here is it, it's impersonal. When it was being fought very fiercely at the ramparts or the fortifications, said, quid dubitas, why are you hesitating, Vorenus? Or what place do you see for praise of your strength or manliness or courage? That kind of sounds strange. Like, what exactly does he mean here? He's taunting him. He's like, come on, what are you waiting for, Vorenus? Like, this place, what better place is there to show your manliness? And then we move on. And he says, he finishes it up by saying these words here. Hic dies is going to be our subject. Prep phrase, de nostris controversiis. And then main verb, judicabit. This day will judge concerning our disagreements. So, essentially, Pullo is saying, come on, this is the day, finally, that will show the rest of the legion which one of us, Pullo or Vorenus, is the better one. So, then we have another clause here, cum, haec cum dixisset, and that's the main verb of the clause. I see main verb of a sentence here, procedit. Prep phrase, extra municiones. I see a quae, which is going to indicate some sort of clause. If I keep going, I see est. I'm tempted to end the clause there, but it's actually visa est, or as Caesar wrote it here, est visa. That's going to be the main verb of the clause. And then another main verb of the sentence would be irrumpit. Inside the clause itself, it looks like the subject, I have a new one, was pars. And let's put it all together. So when he had said these things, he proceeded outside of the ramparts, outside of the fortifications, quae, and he burst into quae. He burst into, I guess, like which parts, or what, I'm sorry, let me backtrack. This whole clause right here, you'll understand, is yeah, let me just translate this, and then I think you'll understand. And which part of the enemies seemed the thickest he burst into? It's almost as if this whole clause is sort of the direct object of irrumpit. He burst into which part of the enemies seemed the thickest. So he just ran straight out there into the part of the Nerwii that seemed to have the most number of men. So of course, if you're Vorenus, what are you going to do? Well, in this sentence, Vorenus is going to be our subject. Our main verb here, contenet. And we have another one in subsequitur. We have a deponent, perfect tense deponent participle, veritus. It's describing Vorenus. And let's go for it. So not even does Vorenus hold himself then within the wall, or contain himself within the wall, but having feared the opinion of everyone, he follows. Now we go back to the standpoint of Pullo, because he's already out there in the field. So Caesar starts us off, as he often does, with an ablative absolute here. Oh gosh, that just looks awful. Okay, there we go. Pullo is our subject. I see a prep phrase, an en hostes. Immitit is one main verb. And then we have another prep phrase, ex multitudine. Traicit, another main verb. Procurentem with an nt, em, I see an accusative present participle. Looks like it's going to be describing unum. If I keep going, quo percusso et exanimato kind of looks ablative absolute to me. Mark that as AA. Protegunt would be the main verb. Previous verbs look like they've been singular. Protegunt is plural, so we're going to have some sort of subject change, although it's not directly expressed. Hunc, we know that's accusative. We just go ahead and mark that as a direct object. That's supposed to say do. In hostem, prep phrase. And then we have coniciunt, main verb. Daunt, main verb. Facultatem looks direct object-ish to me. And then we have some sort of genitive, well, we have a genitive gerund here in regrediendi. Let's see here. Tela, spears or weapons. That's probably going to be a direct object here. And then universi will be the subject of coniciunt. So, backtracking, with a moderate amount of space having been left, Pullo hurls a javelin into the enemies. Okay, and he pierces one, meaning one of the enemies, running forward from the crowd. So going back to that ablative absolute, basically Pullo's running towards a very thick part of the Nerwii, but he stops with sort of like a medium-sized distance in between him and the crowd, and then of course he hurls a spear, manages to pierce one of them. And then with this one, literally with which one, but we can say with this one, having been struck and having been literally rendered breathless, meaning, or deprived of breath, meaning killed. Protagon, they, I think the fellow Nerwii would be the subject here, they cover this one with their shields, meaning the body. And then Uni Wersi, all together, they hurl spears against the enemy. Now, the enemy here is, of course, Pullo. So Pullo manages to kill one of the Nerwii. The others run forward, cover the dead Nerwii with their shields, and they start all together hurling their spears in against Pullo. And they do not give an opportunity of retreating. So now Pullo is going to be in a little bit of trouble. And then he's going to be in some even bigger trouble. In this sentence, transfigator would be the subject. It's tempting to say that Pullo would be transfigator is the main verb. It's tempting to say Pullo would be the subject, but his name here is in the dative case. So scutum, most likely, would be the subject. And then defigator, we have that as a main verb. In balteo would be would be a prepositional phrase. And verutum, whatever that means, when we look it up, we'll figure it out. Looks maybe possibly like the subject of defigator. So what does this mean? Dative of reference. For Pullo, the shield is pierced, meaning Pullo's shield is pierced by one of these javelins that's being thrown. And verutum, we look it up and we realize it means a spear or javelin. A javelin, defigator, is driven in or planted in his sword belt. And now in this sentence, starts off with averted, main verb. Now, hic is modifying casus. That's going to be our subject. Vaginam looks like accusative, direct object. And then here we have educere. Go ahead and mark that as an infinitive. Conanti looks like some sort of present participle, going to be in the dative case. We'll get to that in just a second. Moratur, main verb. We have dextram and manum. Dextram would be the obvious modifier for manum, right hand. And then we have right here, circumsistunt would be a main verb. And hostes looks like it would be a subject of circumsistunt, since our main verb switches to plural here, and hostes is plural. So what happens here? This misfortune overturns his sheath, and it delays the right hand. This is a dative of reference with a modified or understood puloni going with it. It delays the right hand for Pullo trying to pull out his sword. So when you think about it, if his sword belt got turned over by the spear, the hilt of the sword, or the sword handle, is now really like towards the ground, and it's delaying him. He's trying really hard using his right hand. He's trying hard to get his sword out of the sheath, and he can't do it. And then, of course, what happens in the meantime, and the enemies surround, and then the direct object understood is him, meaning Pullo, having been obstructed or hindered. But have no fear, here comes Varinus. So we have succurit, our main verb. Inimicus and vorenus seem to go together, subjects here. And subvenet appears to be a main verb. So, unfriendly Varinus, or meaning Varinus, unfriendly, oh gosh, what's the best way to say that? Um, Meaning that Varinus and Pullo are sort of rivals here, right? So Varinus, unfriendly, he sucurits, he runs up to that one, meaning to Pullo, and he helps him, meaning Pullo, toiling. Next sentence. Ad hunc, prep phrase. A Pullone, prep phrase. Omnis multitudo, looks like a subject to me, nominative. Convertit, main verb. Okay, so confestem, which means at once or immediately, the whole crowd turns itself from Pullo to this guy, meaning Varinus. And then in the second part, arbitrantor would be the main verb. And illum looks like it might go with okisum in some sort of way. And since arbitrantor is a verb of the head, we're probably going to be an indirect statement here, which is probably going to tell me that okisum is actually okisum esse, which is a perfect tense infinitive. Oh, that looks awful, but go with it. So they think that that guy, meaning Pullo, was killed veruto by the javelin. So since Pullo had a spear that had been pierced and a javelin which had turned over his sword belt, they just assumed that Pullo is dead or is quickly going to die. So they're going to turn their attentions now, of course, to Varinus. So next little bit. Rem or Garrett here, main verb. Looks like Varinus is going to be a subject. And then uno interfecto looks sort of like an abalabs to me. Ablative absolute. Propellet, main verb. Reliquos looks to be some sort of direct object. Okay. So what happens? Varinus literally wages the thing. Cominus means in close combat or hand to hand. So in other words, he sort of fights, carries on the fight hand to hand or in close combat with a sword. And with one man having been killed, he drives back a little bit the rest of them. So Varinus kills one guy, drives the rest of the Neroi back a little bit. So everything seems to be going well for him. But then we come to this part. Dum cupidius instat. Here we go. Instat would be main verb of clause. And then in locum inferiorem, looks like a prep phrase. Concidit, main verb. Deiectus is describing whoever the subject is, most likely Varinus. So, while he, meaning Varinus, was pressing on more eagerly, he, having been cast down, he falls into a lower place, meaning he basically just kind of like tripped and fell down. He got a little bit too eager after killing that one guy. But have no fear, because who comes to the rescue now? Why, it's Pullo. He's our subject. And fert would be our main verb. Subsidium, direct object. Okay. And then huic is dative. Circumvento is also dative, so I'm going to draw a line from circumvento over here to huic. So, in turn, Rursus, Pullo brings help to this guy, meaning Varinus, having been surrounded. And ambo incolumes, both unharmed, they are the subject there. Compluribus interfectis, that would be another ablative absolute. So both of them, unharmed, with several having been killed, meaning several of the enemy, the Nerwii, having been killed, what do? They recover themselves within the ramparts with the greatest praise, meaning they retreat back into the military camp with the greatest praise. And then in this last sentence, we've got in contentione et curtamine, where sawit would be a main verb. Fortuna would be a subject. We have some sort of clause. And probably best just to end it here. Inside, we have esset would be a subjunctive main verb of the clause. Posset, another one. And viderator. I do see one infinitive, and that's de judicari. Alter seems to be some sort of subject. Inimicus seems to modify that, nominative. All right. And let's go for it. So thus, fortune turned, or engaged, I guess you could say, engaged each man in contest and struggle, so that one, as an enemy, was of a help, was of a help and safety to the other. So in other words, like one person was a source of help and safety to another, which of course we just saw, and so that it was not able to be judged, and then uter, which one seemed ante ferendus to be preferred to the other in courage or strength. So even though this was supposed to be the day to decide which one of them was the best, they both acted bravely or recklessly, if you want to think about it, so that their struggle will continue to see which one is the best. Okay, thank you.